This case went from plot to plea. We reported last week the estranged wife of Aaron Goodwin worked out a deal with prosecutors to drop one of her charges, but now it looks like she's avoiding trial altogether. I'm Elizabeth Millner with Law&Crime. Now remember how I said last week divorce is always an option, and take this case as a good example. Victoria Goodwin, all because she didn't think her husband would go for a divorce, allegedly plotted to kill him with an inmate down in Florida. So now she lost her husband, her life with him, and she's facing years in prison. If you're going off social media, Aaron Goodwin and his wife Victoria seem like such a loving couple. I mean, one look through her social media page, it's kissy photo here, a date adventure there, selfies at literally the happiest place on earth. You get the picture. But obviously we know with social media, not everything is how it appears. Because even after some of the pics were posted, the damage was already done. So if you've been following the case, you already know the gist. Back in March, detectives in Vegas got a call from another detective, this one from Florida DOC, in reference to a murder for hire plot. The Florida detective explained to the Vegas detective that on October 3rd, yes, Mean Girls Day, an inmate, and not just any inmate, an infamous one who murdered his family, had a cell phone seized. When they downloaded the contents of the phone, it was like a treasure trove of damning evidence, like text messages and Facebook messages planning a murder for hire. Now, had they not watched Law&Crime, why would they think that they wouldn't get caught when the messages were on text and Facebook? Anywho, we know those text messages were between Grant Amato and Victoria Goodwin. From what we've seen in court papers, Victoria, who by the way was going by Victoria Candy, was head over heels in love. Just not with her husband, with Grant. And for Grant's part, he seemed ready to put their sinister murderous plan into motion. Miss Candy, as she's called in the document, even informed her alleged prison bae what hotel her husband was staying at, a photo of what he looks like and the car that he was driving. This as Grant Amato was in contact with an unnamed hitman who was supposed to take care of the situation. Oh, and there was money set aside and everything too. So authorities spoke to her, and she denied wanting her husband killed. So that we know. She was arrested and charged with solicitation to commit murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Now both charges are still listed for her online. However, the solicitation charge is expected to be dropped at her upcoming arraignment. Why? Because she reportedly worked out a deal with prosecutors. Now, under the deal, Victoria will plead guilty to one count of conspiracy to commit murder. So now she'll face 2 to 10 years in prison. But here's the thing. Prosecutors reportedly won't make a recommendation at sentencing. So who knows how long a sentence the judge will actually hand down to her. But what I'm personally interested to know is whether or not her husband Aaron Goodwin will make a victim impact statement at her sentencing. After his wife's arrest and possibly after the shock of her plotting to kill him wore off, Aaron posted to Instagram thanking everyone for the support they've given him during this whole ordeal. He wrote, quote, "Thank you everyone for all the love and support through this emotionally trying time. It really helped a lot and I appreciate you all," end quote. So Victoria was arrested on March 6th. By March 19th, Aaron filed for divorce. In the complaint, Aaron is asking that neither party be awarded alimony from the other. Their assets will be separated and what's Aaron's is Aaron's and vice versa. But also, he's suing her for negligence, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligent infliction of emotional distress, assault, and false imprisonment. Oh, and that he be awarded $10,000 in punitive damages. In the complaint, it states, quote, "The views, tastes, likes, and dislikes of husband and wife have become incompatible to the extent that it has become impossible for them to live together as husband and wife in marital harmony, that there is no possibility of reconciliation between husband and wife." Understandably harsh, but I get not wanting to reconcile when there was a whole murder plot underway. It's unclear where the divorce process stands right now, but Victoria might have more things to worry about, like what the judge has to say after she pleads guilty. Well, I have a great guest joining me to break this down even further, and that's Vegas-based criminal defense attorney Michael Troiano. Michael, thank you so much for joining me today. This case since the start has been nothing short of just wild. Thankfully, Aaron Goodwin is okay, but what's your reaction to this murder for hire plot that was concocted by his wife and convicted killer Grant Amato?
Well, I'll be honest, I didn't know a whole lot about ghost hunters prior to hearing about this case, but ironically, not even a month ago, I stayed in a supposed haunted hotel up in northern Nevada over the evening when I was doing a case out there in outlying jurisdiction, and come to find out, ghost hunters filmed at this specific location. So it's certainly got its Hollywood or Nevada appeal, and the underlying charges, obviously life or death.
And we thought this case might go to trial. Instead, Victoria Goodwin is supposed to plead guilty to conspiracy to commit murder, but prosecutors have also agreed to drop the solicitation charge. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I did get an opportunity to review the guilty plea agreement that she signed and was executed by her and attorney. And it seems like the plea terms are fairly straightforward. They will dismiss the other count, as you mentioned. She will be pleading guilty to one category B as in boy felony to conspiracy to commit murder. The penalty range is 2 to 10 years in prison, potential. And the prosecution has agreed to remain silent, meaning they will not make a recommendation at the sentencing.
And what does that mean in terms of them kind of choosing to stay silent? Does that mean that they kind of give the leeway to the judge? Could the judge even possibly go for more time beyond those 10 years?
So the judge cannot go beyond that time. They are in Nevada. They're uh, prohibited from what we call an illegal sentence. So they have to sentence him within, or her, excuse me, within those 2 to 10 year frames. And to get a little bit more technical for the viewers, in Nevada, the bottom number of your sentence cannot exceed 40% of the top. So we'll make math a little bit easier. If this was a 1 to 10, then a maximum sentence here in Nevada would be 4 to 10 years. This is a 2 to 10, so the math's a little bit skewed. With that being said, as far as no recommendation, that is something that defense attorneys generally try to get. And the best, obviously, is no opposition or a stipulation of probation. But on the other hand, when you have facts that can be sort of nasty, if you will, and the defense attorney can't get on his or her soapbox, you would much prefer the prosecution not to stand in court and pound that away. But in reality, the judge still gets what we call a pre-sentence investigation report. So they're going to get all the facts of the case. And in a case like this, I would imagine the victim always will have the opportunity by statute. It's what we call Marcy's Law here, to come to the trial or any proceedings, but particularly, the sentencing, he will be able to be present and make that argument that the prosecutor would, and talk about the impact. So it's better than the prosecutor arguing, but in most cases, it doesn't make a significant difference, especially if you have a very involved victim, as we do in this case.
And I'm surprised that the prosecution kind of agreed to dropping the solicitation charge, especially since money was put aside to carry out this murder plot. Are you surprised that they agreed to drop it? And why do you think that they agreed to drop the solicitation charge specifically?
Well, at the end of the day, the criminal justice system would just go to a complete halt if every single case was prosecuted from arraignment to trial. Clark County is very busy here. We're the biggest and most populous county in the state of Nevada. That office has over 100 plus lawyers that are excellent at their job, but sometimes the facts are the facts. And it looks like there was text messages. You had the supposed pen pal jail lover that she was trying to get to solicit due to the murder, who was absolutely providing and reached out to police so he could probably get him some better deal in his case in Florida. And I think that the prosecution, as well as the defense attorney, let the messages speak for themselves, and the client probably finally had a clear head that her supposed fantasies or daydreaming, as she said to the police in her interview, got a little bit too far. And instead of trying to drag this out for years on end and all the legal consequences and financial consequences that go along with that, was provided an opportunity to take an exit, if you will, and take a negotiation that her and her counsel deemed fair. So I would say that it makes a lot of sense based upon the facts of this case, and she was caught with her own messages soliciting that murder.
And as a criminal defense attorney, what's your thoughts on just the whole murder for hire plot and aspect? Because for the most part, to me, as just, someone who watches or sees these types of cases every single day, mainly for work, my thought always goes to divorce is always an option. Divorce is easier. Yeah, it may impact your wallet just a little bit, but impacting your wallet versus spending years in prison, I would take the wallets situation. But in terms of just overall, why do you think that defendants always just think that they, one, won't get caught doing a murder for hire, or two, that, there's always other options, just leave?
Right. But here's the thing, right? You're talking from an unattached, unemotional, sober mind frame. And you're talking objectively, right? When we're all in our own relationships, as much as we all believe that we're great human beings, we have faults, we have issues. And when you're able to kind of take a step back, and whether it's from a psychiatrist or a counselor or a criminal defense attorney, and say, hey, listen, I know there's more to the story. I don't know the entirety of your relationship, but things have gotten a little too serious. And that's where it really comes from, right? I have plenty of clients that have been charged wrongfully and are innocent, but I also have plenty of clients that were wrapped up in some sort of issue that alcohol, drugs, and mental health definitely exacerbated their rational thinking. And as you said, a divorce can be costly emotionally as well as financially, but you get to exit. And especially my understanding is they didn't have children, which generally makes it a little bit more clean. But coming from that irrational mind frame where they're under the influence of alcohol, drugs, and dealing with the long-term effects of that interpersonal relationship, people make bad decisions. And you're right. Nobody generally, not nobody, but the stakes are a little bit too high for a plot to hire to murder somebody, especially if your confidant is a pen pal jailmate. I mean, that's just, I would not suggest anybody do a murder for hire, but if you're going to try to do anything outside of the skirts of the law, think of who you're dealing with, somebody who already didn't figure out the crime and is serving jail time.
Yeah, and especially since, just looking on her social media page, which is, by the way, still open to the public, just seeing the fact that, just even a few months ago, she was posting like photos with the two of them saying, "Mi amor, happy anniversary, I love you so much," these types of things. What are your thoughts on just the stark kind of double life for a little bit that she was leading? Because according to investigators, she was in communications with Gran Amato last year, but in terms of just this double life of plotting, to kill her husband, but then at the same time still going on trips with him, still living with him, still appearing as if she's in love with him. But lo and behold, this was going on all under Aaron's nose.
Well, I think that's a tale as old as time. I don't think us or anybody in your audience doesn't know of a man or woman who's been in a relationship and complained and broke that person down to their friends. But oh well, Cabo's in a couple weeks. Maybe I'm going to push off that breakup, if you will. And I think what's unique about what you said earlier, 10, 15, 20 years ago, when you would have a Hollywood actress, a starlet, whatever it may be, out there, there really wasn't social media. So that's all you saw is this power couple together at the red carpet. Oh, they look great. And then you hear all these salacious details in the background. But that's not really the case anymore. Everybody has social media. We all see it. We know people. We have friends. We have family. Let's admit it, who are playing that they have this magical dream life, but about the reality and drama. And I think that's why we all agree that social media is fake.
Yeah, it is. Nothing is ever as it appears to be, especially when it comes to Instagram, for sure. Platform I just particularly am not a big fan of. But anyway, as far as, the alleged hitman in this case, we don't know who that person is. But apparently there were texts, according to the police report, that Gran Amato was sending, "Hey, is this done? Have you been able to do this?" Again, not knowing who this alleged person is on the other side, could that person potentially face charges? Or since the matter is kind of being resolved with Victoria, that maybe this person won't face criminal charges?
Sure. So there's several players in here, right? So you mentioned Amato. It seems as if he was able to escape the culpability by bringing it immediately to the police and saying, "Hey, here's this my get out of jail free ticket for his previous crime." So I don't think there's going to be anything there. It seems like he cooperated early enough to escape that. As far as this other individual, on the limited discovery that's been made available to me in the public, like as you said, there really wasn't much information about this person. The closest that I was able to ascertain is that there was that either one of those air tags that Apple has or these other companies were essentially a tracking device, and you could find the phone. I don't know exactly how that was set up, either through the phone or the air tag, but either way, they had like in time, like real time GPS location of him. That it sounds like this crime easily could have been accomplished if it wanted to. So as to what this other person is or has been identified, I have no knowledge of that. It hasn't been released by the public, so to be seen.
Yep, definitely. And as far as kind of how it works in terms of entering a guilty plea, especially in a Vegas courtroom, is it a situation where Victoria will enter that guilty plea as we're all expecting, and then the judge will directly go into sentencing, or do you think that that matter will be handled at a separate date?
That'll be happen in a separate date. Some cases is like lower level, like misdemeanor crimes, or sometimes gross misdemeanor crimes. It's kind of a gap crime between a felony and a misdemeanor here in the state of Nevada. In those situations, generally you can be sentenced the day that you enter your plea. Felonies are different. For the overwhelming majority of felonies, absent some interesting exceptions to that, what happens is you will be the judge will accept your plea, make sure that you've gone through it knowing, voluntarily, intentionally, answered all your questions, and then they will refer your case to the Nevada Department of Parole and Probation. And then Parole and Probation will prepare and interview the client or the defendant with what's called a PSI, a pre-sentence investigation report. And the way I explained it to my clients is like a really in-depth background check. They talk about your mental health, drug abuse, sexual abuse, work history, family ties to the community, prior crimes, if any, etc. So it's a really in-depth analysis. They also do give you an opportunity to comment on the case in itself. I always instruct my clients not to. That's my job when we go to sentencing in the courtroom. So absent them politely declining that portion of the interview, they are required to give them all that other background information so that when you go to sentencing, which in this particular case, since she's in custody, generally it will be about 45 days subsequent to her entering her plea. When you go to sentencing at that particular day, prior to, parole and probation will provide the prosecution, the judge, as well as the defense attorney that PSI. And I, as the defense attorney, have an obligation to provide that to my client, review that with my client, and make sure that there's no inaccuracies. And I'm not talking about, hey, the car was blue, but it's actually red. We're talking about if they falsely put in there you had a prior felony or two that didn't exist. Those are the type of issues that would need to be cleaned up prior to the judge actually going forward on sentencing. But assuming that document is clean and there's no objection by the defense or the prosecution, then at that next court date would be the time that sentencing would typically go forward.
That makes a lot of sense. And as far as just not, or excuse me, as far as just rolling the dice and just taking it to trial to see kind of what happens, why do you think they didn't go that route, that being the defense?
Well, as I said earlier, the text messages, I have a lot of those cases because, as you said, whatever it is, Instagram, any of the social media outlets that are out there, I think a lot of people, especially my younger clients, don't understand that it doesn't just disappear. Like they have Snapchat has like these, vanishing modes and all these things. So to your viewers out there, those messages generally are kept in the cloud. Now they have like WhatsApp that has end-to-end encryption. They could still get into that if they get in your phone, but you just have to have that mentality. Anything that you type in there could be read in the public course or at trial. So they had the messages, and her words were very clear. I mean, she essentially said, like, I know divorce is an option, but I want to end his existence. So sure, she could have been dramatic about it and gone to trial, but I don't think that a Clark County jury would buy that was just a daydream or a fantasy when she went so far into her conspiracy to start a pen pal relationship with another person in jail. This wasn't a casual conversation between friends with one too many drinks that said something that you didn't really mean or kind of regretted. I mean, she took a lot of steps to get there. So that's why I think it was very smart to come to a resolution, and she should be grateful that the DA's office, with all the star power that's involved with this and the media attention, didn't just say, hey, we're going to make this bigger than it already is, and provided her with what seems like a fair deal.
Right, because, the other alternative could have been a lot more time in prison. And now, she kind of got what she wanted. She wanted a divorce. Now she's getting that. Aaron Goodwin filed for divorce and is also suing her as well, too. And in terms of just murder for hire plots and these types of stories, to me, I always just have to remember that even though Aaron Goodwin was not killed, thankfully, but he's still a victim in this matter. In terms of what any type of statement that he's making to the court as far as either sentencing or just even the effects and the shock of what had happened to him, what do you think that could look like? Or do you think that he'll even make a victim impact statement?
Well, again, we're dealing with somebody who has a television show, is already in the public eye. I don't know him. I'm not going to speculate as to his motives, but we can agree it can go a lot of different ways. Some people might take this as an opportunity to rise their stardom, if you will, and make this part of this show. We know plenty of people that do that anything, what's the old saying? No press is bad press. So maybe he goes that route, and makes this part of his show and his life, and sees, value in dollars and followers and viewers and things of that nature. Or maybe this truly was a earth-shattering, disturbing thing that came in his life, and he wants his privacy. As far as the state is concerned, the only way that I could really see a judge potentially giving her some leeway to this was to show up himself and essentially say, you know what, I've been an abusive husband. I've done A, B, C, and D. I pushed her to this. And again, I'm not saying that is the case at all. I have nothing in basis of that. But that's the only way that I put myself in the position of a judge that I may, she still did it, but it's not necessarily an excuse, but I may consider if either the defense presented that information that she was the victim of long-term mental, physical, sexual abuse, whatever it may be, by the hands of her husband, or if he had a mea culpa and explained that he had a big part to play in this. But if this was just her having a fantasy and not really interested in the day-to-day pressures of a marriage that we all go through, and there's really no other excuse other than her bare selfishness, then I'd say the judge is going to find an appropriate sentence for that kind of repulsive behavior.
And if I was a betting person, because this is a Vegas case, I would bet a little bit more on the selfish part. But, I digress, and I don't know the full extent of their relationship or anything like that. So we'll see how this all plays out once she enters that plea. Michael Troiano, I want to thank you so much for your time and your insight into this case. Before we sign you off, though, say you have a crystal ball. What type of sentence do you see the judge handing down Victoria Goodwin?
My understanding is that she has either limited or no prior criminal history. So that goes into a big part of it. Another part of it is that particularly this was a individualized crime. This is not a crime where she's going out and hurting random people. And I think the public at large could possibly feel safe if she's eventually released. I would say on the lower end. I don't know who her sentencing judge is. I didn't get a chance to look at that. That can kind of handicap if we were making a cash bet on it. But without that vital piece of information, I would say either probation with the lengthy suspended sentence term over her head, or a minimal sentence in that structure would be a 2 to 5. I'd be very surprised if she gets the max or close to that. Again, unless I'm missing facts, unless there is more criminal history that I wasn't aware of, or she's done things subsequent to the hearing that can harm her case. Don't talk on the jail calls. They always get you in trouble.
Exactly. They definitely do. And again, even though you delete the deleted, investigators can still find that information. Michael, again, thank you so much for your insight into this. I really appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Great seeing you.
Victoria Goodwin's next hearing is scheduled for Tuesday, the 22nd, and that's when she's expected to enter her plea. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.